So in Tetzaveh, we have, this is really fascinating, we have a wine libation, which Gabe mentioned in his summary that there's some wine being poured out. There's a wine libation. Now we haven't, this is the very first time we've seen articulated anywhere in the Torah wine libation. Now there was, Jacob does a libation of unspecified liquids in chapter 35. Could have been wine, could have been water, could have been beer. We don't know what it was. Here we have a very clear articulation on the Mizbeach, on the altar, of wine in both verses 40 and 41. Funnily enough, later on in this week's Torah portion, in verse 30, in chapter 30, verse 9, we have the incense altar, which is not allowed any wine for libation. Just for a broader context, of course, we see this a few times in Leviticus 23 and really gets its full articulation in chapter 20 and 29 in the book of Numbers. So we do have this more fully fleshed out later on in the book of Numbers. But here in this week's Torah portion, we have it. So can I do a little, I don't know if this is Midrash technically. Yeah, all right, this is Midrashic, sort of. So what's the deal? Is this drinking, right? There are no humans consuming this wine, which, by the way, we're talking about anywhere between 0.8 and a liter, 0.8 liters and maybe a full liter of wine. So, it's not a small amount. We're dumping all this wine. And maybe this is where it gets Midrashic. Maybe this is divine consumption, right? That it's not just the wine that's being poured out. There's animals, so there's like a nice solid protein. There's some like flour and oil, so you get your starchy side, so to speak, and then you have your drink to go along with it. It's like God's happy meal. And so we have that, and it's almost as if God is, we see like sort of the opposite of the Tzelem Elohim, that this is sort of an imitation. It's like imitatio Dei, except inverted. Whereas people need to eat, we perceive God also needing to eat, and of course, more importantly for our purposes, drink. And so I think that's a really interesting perspective on Tetzaveh of the importance of God drinking wine also.